everyone, I'm Maki. Have you ever seen people debating how Gundam Unicorn should be treated in discussions about the Universal Century series? Some fans feel that Gundam Unicorn should not be considered a legitimate part of the Universal Century series. This opinion is not just a matter of personal taste. In some cases, it is based on what they see as logical contradictions within the story. Of course, some people base their argument on the fact that the Unicorn story was written by Harutoshi Fukui rather than Yoshiyuki Tomino, the creator of the original Universal Century. In official media, Unicorn is treated as part of the legitimate Universal Century history, but I can understand why opinions are divided. This time, let's explore one of the reasons for this. By studying this topic, I believe we can deepen our understanding of not only Unicorn's position as a story, but also the entire world of the Universal Century. There is one small warning. Today, I will be discussing spoilers for the ending of the novel Hathaway's Flash. We do not yet know whether the film will have the same ending as the novel. However, if you want to avoid any advance information before watching the film, it would be better to skip today's program. Please watch this program after you have seen the third film. Are you ready? Please consider supporting my channel by joining the 99-cent per month membership. As a thank you, you will receive a name badge and comment stamps. Now, let's begin the analysis. One reason some people have a negative opinion of the Unicorn story is for Frontal's statement. He is the leader of the Neo Zeon forces and is known by the nickname the Second Coming of Charles Nabal. During a conversation with the protagonist, he makes a statement along these lines. The space migration policy carried out by the Earth's Federation government was an abandonment policy. As the number of people who could live on Earth had reached its limit, the government began to encourage migration into space. However, Frontal claims that this policy was intended to exile unnecessary people to space. This claim creates a logical contradiction with Tomino's stories. The first volume of Hathaway's Flash clearly describes space migration. It contains a passage stating that the Federation government carried out forced migration to prevent discriminatory attitudes arising as a result of migration. The Federation government did not exile unnecessary people into space. In order to restore Earth's environment, it forcibly carried out space migration, targeting all of humanity. There is also a description stating that all races were made to migrate equally and uniformly. In the novel High Streamer, which is based on Shah's counterattack, there is also a description of an era of forced migration. However, Frontal's statement describes a reality that is completely different from the stories written by Tomino. Among fanatical fans, some say that they lost interest in the story of Unicorn the moment they heard Frontal's statement. In fact, Frontal is talking about a set of rules that differ from those of the Universal Century, created by Tomino. However, I feel it would be a shame to lose interest in Unicorn simply because of this statement. The key to understanding this statement lies within the stories written by Tomino. In Hathaway's Flash, the central members of the Earth's Federation government hold a meeting called the Adelaide Conference. At this meeting, the fate of a new law called the Adelaide Bill is to be decided. Hathaway and his group's main objective is to prevent this from happening. Originally, humanity was forcibly migrated into space. However, there were exceptions. These were people responsible for work related to restoring the planet's natural environment. They were allowed to stay on Earth by obtaining permits issued by the Federation government. This system was strictly necessary for the restoration of Earth's environment. The preservation of cultures specific to certain races was also included in these provisions. However, some government officials exploited this system. They exploited it to use Earth, where the population had dwindled, as a comfortable holiday destination. Those who acted to remove these individuals included Jamidov Hyman, Herman Khan, and Charles Neville. By the time of Hathaway's flash, the situation had become even more serious. The Hathaway Bill is about to alter these exceptional provisions that allow people to stay on Earth. A formal clause will be written into the law stating that people approved by the Earth's Federation government will be permitted to stay on Earth. At first glance, the wording seems no different from the previous exceptional provisions. However, these provisions would be interpreted more broadly and transform into a system that could be operated at the Federation government's discretion. This would transform into a system that enables the government to easily remove Earth's residents at its own discretion. In the novel, it is also stated that no one except those recognized by the Federation government will be permitted to live on Earth. In the third volume, the Hathaway Bill is officially passed. Henry Yak-san, the Director General of the Criminal Police Organization, makes this clear. Migration to Earth will be controlled by bureaucrats and the government. Let's also take a look at the story of F-91. You might be surprised to learn that the film is about the consequences of the Hathaway Bill. When F-91 was produced, the anime version of Hathaway's Flash had not yet been made. However, the anime film reflected the story of the novel. Let's focus on the conversation between Mike Runner and Cecily Fairchild. Restoring Earth's environment ended up taking a long time. Humanity now has no choice but to live in space forever. Nevertheless, those who return to Earth are implementing an abandonment policy that disregards the people living in space. This is Mike's view. Following the passing of the Hathaway Bill, members of the Earth's Federation government began to return to Earth. Naturally, only those approved by the government can exercise this right. Mites have called this situation the abandonment policy. Now, having heard everything up to this point, you will probably have noticed one fact. In Tomino's stories, there is indeed wording that suggests the policies carried out by the Earth's Federation government are an abandonment policy. However, some people may want to argue against this. The story of Hathaway's Flash is set in Universal Centurio 105. F-91 is set in Universal Centurio 123. Unicorn, meanwhile, is set in Universal Century 0096. Frontal claims that the Federation government implemented an abandonment policy before they began what was effectively an abandonment policy. But please remember this. In the second half of the story, it is revealed that Frontal has a mysterious ability that allows him to know all of human history. From his perspective, knowing the facts of tens of thousands of years of history, or perhaps even more, 30 years would probably be nothing more than a margin of error. When Frontal speaks with Baniji, he speaks as someone who knows all of history. So he is not lying. Lastly, I would like to add one more piece of information. This concerns Ricardo Marsnas, the first Prime Minister of the Earth's Federation government, who appears at the beginning of the Unicorn story. He was Prime Minister when the Universal Century began and space migration was initiated. He located the Prime Minister's residence on the space station Lovelace, where he lived. He took the lead himself, demonstrating to all of humanity that they could migrate into space regardless of race, nationality, or social position. The writer Fukui also depicts the fact that the first Prime Minister of the Federation government was the first to migrate into space himself. After depicting scenes like this, he has Frontal speak the words abandonment policy. I think this is useful material for forming a judgment. When thinking about today's topic, there is one point we must not forget. I am talking about this while also offering my own personal interpretation. I don't know how much respect Fukui had for the fine details when he wrote the story of Unicorn. I get the impression that he is an extremely passionate fan of Tomino's work. I believe he wrote the story of Unicorn after studying Tomino's work very deeply. I think full Frontal's statement was the result of that. This is just a conclusion I have reached based on my impression. Broadly speaking, there are three possible interpretations of Frontal's statement. The first interpretation is that he did not consider consistency with Tomino's stories in the first place. It was a statement written to create the necessary situation for developing the Unicorn story. The second interpretation, he was simply speaking as the leader of the Neo Zeon forces, describing the situation as his comrades understood it. In the story, Frontal says, "I am a vessel that receives the will of the people." Whether this was true or not was not the issue. He stated that the policy carried out by the Earth's Federation was an abandonment policy, as this was what the people of Neo Zeon wished and interpreted. The third interpretation, Frontal knows all of history. He knew that the Earth's Federation's migration policy would ultimately become an abandonment policy. That is why he used the term abandonment policy in Universal Century 0096. How would you interpret it? Of course, if you come up with your own interpretation that differs from these, that does not make it wrong. I would be happy if you shared your opinion as well. Consider the world of the Universal Century and the position of Unicorn as a story. If this has helped you analyze those things in your own way, I would be happy too. Thank you for watching until the end. I'll see you again in the next program.